all living in America. Amerika ist wunderbar. We're all living in America. America. America.
At first glance, especially if one only understands the Anglo tongue, Rammstein's America might seem like a bizarre tribute to American culture. The culture that brought us Coca-Cola, Mickey Mouse, Santa Claus, and the Wonder Bra. In truth, though, it is anything but. If you're at all familiar with Rammstein, this should come as no surprise as Till Lindemann doesn't unironically offer tribute to anything but Dicke Titten. The song is actually about the tragedy of American cultural and geopolitical hegemony in the aftermath of our bloody and indefensible invasion of Iraq, which took place in 2003, just a year prior to the song's release.
Now, if you have more than 2 brain cells to rub together, you'll be struck by the difference that 20 years can make. Committing villainy against Iraq 20 years ago versus helping Ukraine fight back against Russian villainy today. However, if you're Noam Chomsky or Hassan Packer,
BuzzFeed call him Woke Bay,
then you know for realsies that nothing has changed because America bad. For reasons that seem beyond comprehension, Noam Chomsky, possessing the moral and political instincts of a developmentally delayed toddler as he does, even emphasizes that, actually, America worse than Russia because casualty figures. Of course, there are many problems with this assertion. You can't just quantify suffering abstractly for one, but beyond all of the problems with this argument, even if it is obviously true, that doesn't make it any less morally repugnant. In order to explain how Chomsky posted cringe, let's go through a thought experiment, because who doesn't love those? Let's say a murderer has taken my neighbor's hostage. We know he has the husband and wife, but we aren't sure where the kids are. Police surround the house, and worried friends of the couple gather. Would this be an appropriate time to announce that actually this situation isn't that bad because 10 years ago a sadistic serial killer killed 20 people in this neighborhood? Quite possibly, I would be correct in that this crime occurring now is unlikely to inflict the same level of suffering as that inflicted by the sadistic serial killer all those years ago. Even so, you would be right to call me a morally repugnant piece of shit who should choke on cock and die because I'm dismissing the immense suffering occurring before me now while discouraging efforts to help the present victims. And that's why Noam Chomsky is a morally repugnant piece of shit who should choke on cock and die. But why is Noam like this? Well, it all started in the 90s when his little dick got really hard upon finding a Serbian rape camp in Bosnia. The American-led international order cock-blocked him from committing war crimes with the army of Republika Srpska. His hatred of the West was cemented when NATO halted his genocidal honeymoon with Slobodan Milosevic in Kosovo. Ever since, he's had a deep-seated hatred of anything and everything Western.
Wait, why is this video a thing? Oh yes, this brings me to the issue of hypocrisy in international politics. The English word hypocrisy comes from the Greek word hypokrisis, which refers to acting in a play. The analogy goes that just as the ancient Greek play actors would don masks to create an inauthentic impression of their thoughts and emotions on the audience, actually conveying what their characters should feel at that moment, hypocrites dishonestly convey an image of their public persona which deeply clashes with the individual they actually are. For instance, I love cats. All of my friends are well aware of and likely exhausted from hearing about my appreciation for members attesting themselves to the elegant species, or mates, in Nermalian nomenclature. Let's say, hypothetically, that I'm a massive hypocrite. I portray myself as a nice guy who just has a deep love for kittens and gets visibly upset and offended whenever I hear of one being abused. That's my public persona. However, let's say that in private I regularly kill kittens, put them on the grill, and chow down to my heart's content. In this situation, I'm a massive hypocrite because my public persona, the image that I convey to those around me and the values that I impose on others, as a cat lover, is in such deep conflict with my private self, who I really am and what I really do, as a serial cat abuser. Obviously, in this situation, I would be both a massive hypocrite and a morally repugnant piece of shit who should choke on cock and die. But do those two identities, being a hypocrite and being a bad person, have anything to do with each other? I would argue no. I would be a bad person regardless of my public persona because I would be doing harm to my fellow creatures no matter how I represent myself. As far as I'm concerned, the only meaningful components of morality are the true the actual consequences which our behavior has on the world, and constructed abstractions like hypocrisy or dishonesty don't enter into it. To illustrate this, let's amend the previous hypothetical to remove the hypocrisy. Let's say that my private self, a serial cat abuser, is no different, but my public persona is open, honest, and proud about my cat abuse, meaning that my private self is in perfect harmony with my public persona, and that I am thus not a hypocrite. But would I be a better person? Certainly not. And I would argue that I would probably be a worse person because I'm publicly encouraging cat abuse and thus may produce even more harm than in the previous situation. This shows how hypocrisy at any level is an incredibly stupid and senseless concept which should be scrubbed from our minds, but it's even more nonsensical when applied to the realm of international politics. Even ignoring its conceptual problems, hypocrisy is pretty much impossible to apply correctly, even on its own terms, to international politics, simply because the conflict between the public persona and the private self is very much an individual phenomenon which doesn't work well when applied to entire societies. Let's say that instead of attacking Ukraine, Putin's army somehow landed in America and started raping American civilians and bombing American cities en masse. Putin's gimps, like Noam Chomsky, would doubtless develop raging erections because we're finally receiving karma for America being bad. Self-evidently, this would be a morally repugnant response. You can't punish individuals for the crimes of their wider society, which they personally neither orchestrated nor took part in. The difference today is that Ukrainian society isn't even culpable for the crimes of the wider West. Ukraine didn't violate Iraq's sovereignty, and Ukraine didn't flatten Baghdad. The guilt for these crimes falls squarely on the shoulders of America and her allies who initially invaded. To respond to the grisly crimes Russia continues to commit against Ukrainians by pointing to crimes of the West is not the super-intelligent point Putin's gimps think it is. It's just a fallacious distraction. Two things can be bad at once. It's the war crimes of the Putin regime and the West's war crimes. The existence of one does not justify or minimize the other.
To conclude this video, I want to address one question which, despite the insistence of Putin's gimps, has absolutely no ramifications on the morality of any other power on the world stage. Is America bad? Since our inception, we have done many unspeakably horrific things, from genocidal campaigns against the native inhabitants of this land, to slavery, Jim Crow, and the dozens of coups d'etats we've initiated throughout the world. Even today, America continues to do ghastly things. However, the question is not about America's actions. It's about whether America is essentially bad in a way that inevitably taints everything we do. The answer to that question obviously is no. Every society, from Germany and Russia to America and shockingly Britain, is capable of doing tremendous good as well as tremendous evil. Attempting to dismiss attempts at progress with some conservative or isolationist essentialism really makes one no different than Jordan Basketball Peterson, who insists that one have a perfectly ordered life before they even dare to try improving society. You're really just exhibiting and advocating for complacency with the perpetuation of injustice.
Natürlich bin ich ein Dummkopf. I am well aware that I know next to nothing. I am but a sack of meat, who, by a happenstance of the universe, exists, and, by a cosmic accident, was endowed with sentience. I did not make this video to claim that I'm definitely right, and the likes of Noam are definitely wrong. I don't watch him religiously, but Hassan seems like a really smart guy who, half the time, makes good points. Although I have not read much from him, Noam Chomsky is clearly a genius. If I did not take these men at least somewhat seriously, or think that their arguments had some deceptive merit, I would not have wasted my time responding to them. I have a very brash and overconfident communication style, but that is not a perfect reflection of my internal self. I know my limits. I know that I can be insanely irrational. The reason I feel a bit frustrated with the likes of Noam and Hassan is that they don't seem to have the same humility. They're simply correct, and you're just an irrational idiot if you disagree. Maybe they're similar to me in that they are humble, but their overconfident public persona is in conflict with their personal self. In such a case, they should really stop hypocritically harping on about hypocrisy. I'm sure I made a number of logical and terminological errors, so please tell me all about them in the comments. Let's not fling shit at each other, though. If you refuse to be civil and instead will passionately defend the honor of your favorite sack of meat, I'll know that you never got this far and aren't worth engaging with.